Alright, welcome back to another video, guys. This one's going to be a bit different. It's still a personal replay review of just how I did, explaining my thought process on it, but it's a bit of a different one because this time it's in the XM66F. I'll just call it the XM, I guess. Brand new loot box tank. If you play the game, you know the drill. Only appears in loot boxes. I bought me fair share of loot boxes and was able to get all 5 tanks. But this tank is, although it wasn't the most heavily marketed tank, it's definitely one of the more interesting ones from the boxes because, you got the smooth turret with the, impenetrable turret, but you also have absurd DPM with, admittedly not the best TD gold pen of 276, with your, with your SU-130 PMs, with your 300, and your ship packs with your 330s, things like that. However, it is essentially, it's very similar to the E4 in regards to how it plays, in that it has the illusion of armor, because although frontally it looks pretty solid, like, smooth thing, kind of small looking cupolas, mantlet that looks thick, well, this sort of mantlet spot here, I believe that's 290, but the biggest weakness is this little bulge thing here, which actually accounts as part of its armor. Excuse me. And this little flat bit right here, when you're looking at it direct on, is 240. 240 effective, which makes it really, really easy. And, the cupolas, although they may look small, they're really, really, really easy to hit because this entire bit up here also counts as part of the cupola, which is actually pretty massive. And then, your hull is paper. You can't really side scrape because you got the bulge, and you got your turret ring. So this thing really only has a single niche, and that's being a hull down DPM monster. Because I believe the reel is like 7.5. I can get mine down to 7.5 seconds with food, but like, 7.5 seconds with 400 alpha. That's more than a renegade. Like, that's pretty solid DPM. That's like Tortoise at tier 8 levels of DPM. The only problem is, you don't have the armor profile of a Tortoise, and you have little to no HP, and not a fully rotating turret. It only goes, I believe, like 45 degrees in front of you, which can get really annoying sometimes with having to deal with it. But anyways, in regards to El Haluf, just pretty standard spot. I'm with teammate who's playing the Renegade. So we're just thinking, all right, I know there's 2 already, so I don't want to play out here because then I'll just get splash party like the Terminator is. And playing here is already pretty nice because, they're making mistakes and letting me get easy shots on them. Pro tip for this sort of 4 square quadrant, because, like, this entire area around here is generally where the game is won and lost. Pushing into the dip, at least when it's heavily contested like this, in my opinion, can be a bad idea, unless you have overwhelming numbers, which, they do. They have, 6, 8, 7 to our 4, so they can pretty easily push this. However, the reason they lose the game is because they don't just continue to just drive into us, which would honestly win them the game. Yeah, me and my platoon mate, we're still playing up here because there isn't really a threat. The only threat is the 122 TM, really. And I see him roll up, try to shoot my platoon mate, and I don't really want to let that happen. Speaking about that G-Star, I don't know what he was doing, but he let me get 1 or 2 nice easy shots on him, which was nice. There's an off chance. I know I've been able to pen it in the past. I'm not sure because of the lackluster gold pen that I'll be able to just pen this thing frontally. So I try and shoot the cupola, and lo and behold, it hits some pens. And now it's just, another ridge fight part 2 with pretty heavily armored tanks and me trying to hit pixel shots, which is always fun, but it's insane how this thing pumps out damage because the battle is still technically like almost midway through, like halfway through. Like, they're down to half HP, we're down to half our HP, and I already have 3.2, which is insane to see. It just shows how fast this thing will just pump out damage without you realizing. Because, like, you out-reload a Renegade and have higher alpha than a Renegade, and a Renegade's honestly a pretty solid tank, and, like, you get those solid 450 rolls. But I see that I have a tiny, really pixel angle on the Bizante, like, where I penned there last. That's technically a weak spot, but again, it's a pixel angle. I see the ELC get lit behind me. I want to see if I could get a shot, but then I realize it's not worth it because he's just going to get safe from all of us. Plus, this thing isn't really entirely accurate to be taking those long-range shots. It very much plays like an E4 in regards to how it should be played, whereas like a second line, almost support heavy, or support heavy tank destroyer because it has, like I said before, but like the E4, it has the illusion of armor. You may think that this thing is, really heavily armored because sloped turret and really thick mantlet and, um, generally well armored front, but it has cupolas, it has this little bulge thing that not many people know about, but as this thing is it's being played more, the general, like, community is going to know it, and your hull is hot garbage as well. If you expose your turret ring flat, this is also a very easy, like, very, very easy pen. But at this point, there isn't really anything I can do. It's just a matter of, trying to pixel snipe a Bizante because I don't really need to push or do anything right now because they still technically have the advantage because of the positions that they're in. There's no reason for me to overpoke and lose my HP, kind of like my platoon mate just did. But now I see that this Bizante, he's essentially almost alone. 122 TM was trying to hit this spot right here, which is also a weak spot if you turn your turret, and he just misses. But I see the opportunity of the Bizante being alone and the Italian tank destroyer thing being distracted. So I'm able to kill me and this Type 63 are able to kill him relatively easily. And it's still a matter of trying to kill the SMV and trying to kill the 122 TM. Now that a couple other tanks have actually joined in, like the Terminator came back, the Scorpion is pushing from base, we can push this now because of numbers advantage. I didn't want to push it sooner because I will sometimes initiate the push, but I don't ever want to be the sole initiator of the push. Because sometimes you'll get instances where your team will just sort of leave you at the dry and leave you to die, and I don't really ever want that to happen. But like as you can see on that other XM, I aimed, right here with him looking directly at me, and I was able to easily pen and kill him. So for how to really deal with this thing, when it's hull down, you're not going to really do much unless you're pixel sniping its cupolas. But this, again, this weak spot here, big, is a huge weakness for it when the general population starts to figure it out. Because, again, this thing is still relatively new. It's only been out for like a week. And most people still generally do not know how to deal with it. But a lot of people are figuring out, like, its hull is garbage. It has the patented American tank destroyer engine block thing that if you try and side scrape, you'll just easily be penned, which works on both this, the E4, the E3, all those tanks. But with this, it's almost like a tier 8 E4. It's not an E3 because it doesn't have the... Yeah, this thing gets buttered frontally by an E3 firing AP, track and damage on the side. It's not an E3 because it doesn't have the hull armor to pass for an E3. It's more of a hull armor of an E4. Like, even then, I was relatively angled on the upper plate, and he just butters it. It's like, this thing... It's like I said before, this thing has the illusion of armor. But even then, it has the absurd amount of DPM about it. Because, like, granted, this battle took 8 minutes, but I'm already at, what, 5.5 all the way up to 6k already, and this guy up here fired, so I know I can beat his reload because that thing has like an 10-11 second reload. Which also brings up another point of, if you want to do like half decent, you should at least familiarize yourself roughly what the reloads are of everything, because not a lot of people will expect a tank with 400 alpha to have sub 8 second reload, especially tier 8. But if you familiarize yourself with your reload, and I joke about this, but if you can count to 10, you'll be a half-decent player, and that if you know reloads of certain tanks and are able to count reloads of certain tanks, like, the intraclip of an Italian tank destroyer, or the reload of a Type 5, or the difference between the reload of a big gun and small gun E100, knowing that little bit of difference and knowing when they're not loaded and safe, and it's, safe to poke and shoot them, is paramount in getting a bit better at the game. But, like, at the very end, 6k is still really, really solid at tier 8 in an all tier 8 match. And the only thing that's left is the even 90, which there's no point in chasing an even 90 all the way across the map of Hell Haluf. I think we cap out, but like 6k, 4 kills. This thing just prints damage. And I'm using full gold mostly because I want to see what it's like at its most competitive state and how it handles if I'm trying to, go for a 3 mark or something like that. But also, I can still, because of the credit boosters of the Christmas event, I still make a ton of money, shooting full gold, large kits with food, just because of the amount of boosters they have. So I can afford to play like this, and I wanted to see what it's like at its most competitive state, technically, even though I run standard equipment on it. But yeah, I'll take you guys over to the end plates, and I'll let's see how this game turned out. All right, so we got 6K, about 300 assist, 4 kills, mastery, ace tanker, all that good stuff. 1.7 base, which is absurd. I didn't remember it being that high. My platoon mate, he did all right. But with the combination of boosters that we were running and the fact that I was playing in a platoon, I made nearly 400,000 credits and profited nearly 200,000 credits while spamming almost all my gold shells, and also, um, running large boosters and large kits and food and such. But overall, what are my thoughts on the XMF? It's a solid, it's an okay tank. It's not meta. It's not meta breaking. It's not an absurdly overpowered tank like the BZ, but I feel like in the right situation, it could excel really, really well, similar to that El Haluf game, and it will just print damage for you really, really quickly because of the absurd DPM that it has. However, if you get caught out, if you get flanked, or you're not able to chase damage fast enough because, like an E4 and an E3, this tank is still relatively slow. Um, it's not going to be fun. Like I've had games where I've done 6K, and then I've had games where I'll do like 2 shots of damage because you know I'll get penned twice in my turret, already be down 2/3 of my HP, and then I have to fall back and play passive for the rest of the game just to stay alive. Um, so at least for me, this tank can be inconsistent at times, but when it is in the spot that it like a spot where it excels, it does that really, really, really well. It's a fun. It can be a fun tank because of the again absurd amount of DPM, but it's not meta breaking like the BZ last year. And it's the same with most tanks in this box or these boxes. Like, arguably, in my opinion, I like the what is it? The Chinese types or the Japanese Type 63 the most because I like accurate tanks with a pretty decent turret, and then that tank has its ups and downs. Which overall, most of the tanks in the boxes haven't been really game changing, or at least the new ones. Because like the Tiger Mouse, yeah, it's heavily armored, but it gets buttered by if you have a high pen tank, and it'll just a Tiger Mouse will just bully low tiers. But 752 relatively balanced. This thing relatively balanced, maybe like I don't know, slightly above average. I'd like to think of it as above average. And then the Type 63 is situational at best, but I still really like it because absurd accuracy and I'm able to hit my shots. And then the G Store, it's already been out for a while, but it's it I guess it's similar to like a leopard or a sniping medium with no armor but decently fast. But yeah, that's gonna do it for the video, guys. If you liked it, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, all that cool YouTube stuff. Let me know in the comments if you guys want to see a specific tank in action, or at least my thoughts on a specific tank, or even loot box tanks. And yeah, I will see you guys later.